Hi, I'm Matt Little. I'm the Director of Counselling and Education at Empowering Awareness.Asia, and I'm a proud sponsor of this podcast.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How you're doing?
Perfect.
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my podcast.
You're welcome.
So I've gone through your profile. I can see you're owner of two different companies. So I thought to tell about you and your work and some of your previous experience to my audience.
Fine.
So can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
So I'm the CEO of one company called Nexedi. Nexedi is a creator of open source in Europe, and the other company is called Rapid.Space, which is an open source cloud company and also open source 5G infrastructure vendor. These are the two companies. And Nexedi is probably one of the biggest creator of open source in Europe because we created about 15 million lines of code. We specialize mainly on ERP with an open source software called ERP5. We also have a big data platform called Madeleine, and we have, let's say, we are one of the creators of edge computing back in 2008 with a software called SlapOS. So when I say we are a creator, we are doing general purpose edge computing, which means edge computing that can be deployed in drones or in machines or in factories or in airplanes, wherever. It's not just CDN, but completely decentralized cloud. And regarding Rapid.Space, well, we provide cloud services with the idea of open source, open hardware, and open process, full transparency to the customer, no secret, no spying, no monitoring. And we also started to build 5G infrastructure, which we are now deploying for big telecom companies. And because people these days, they tend to love, let's say, American cloud companies like AWS or Chinese one like Ali Cloud. We focus more these days on the telecom part, and we have a very big success because we are maybe one of the very few companies that can deploy a fully open source 5G infrastructure from radio unit, BBU, core network, billing, operation support, and so on.
So who are your customers for Nexidi or RapidSpeed?
So Nexedi customers include companies like Airbus, for example, Toyota, Stellantis, a chemical company in Japan called Sankei Chemical. We also do the system in the United States that is used for road usage charging in Oregon for the Oregon Department of Transportation. We are also doing the billing of French highways with 2 million subscribers and 1 million invoice generated every month in 8 hours. So basically big companies from developed countries that try to optimize their cost and find a good solution for their complex problems that require flexibility. Because if you look at a big company, they have a long history, they have a lot of compliance, a lot of process, a lot of complexity, and they need a way to manage it, but they are asked to save costs. So compared to traditional ERPs, ERP5 is way more flexible and much more cost efficient. At the same time, the design of ERP5 is very similar to what was done in the past for mainframes in banks, because most banks still run on mainframes because nothing has been done that is actually much better. And so we designed ERP5 to be able to run a bank with, I'd say, transactional memory, transactional storage, no single point of failure, all these kind of things. So we have the kind of scalability and enterprise features that are needed to scale up, while our open sourceness allows us to have the right flexibility. And that's a hit each time we have those big companies as customers. Then for big data, let's say there is not that much customers for big data, but if you want an open source platform, a data hub, I don't know what else you have that can run Python and scale Python except Vendelin, our software. I checked the market. I don't see any. If you want to manage petabytes of ND arrays, process them in Python without having out of memory errors and scale that on clusters, well, we have something. Then the last one is for governments willing to do their own cloud. or edge cloud or distributed cloud. If you need a platform to do that, well, we have it. It's open source. And I would say 3 out of 4 government projects that try to deploy open source cloud using, let's say, famous tools, I won't name them, tend to fail because it's too complex. In the case of SlapOS, setting up a node takes, let's say, 2 minutes. Setting up a master that controls the nodes, and you don't need 3 or 4 or 5 computers like in other solutions, just one. Then you can do it offline in, let's say, 1 hour. So that's very popular for people who want to have their own, let's say, edge cloud infrastructure. These are the types. And of course, we have, for example, one customer that depends on the French Ministry of Economy for the edge cloud. And for the big data, one of the customers is a large European electricity company, electricity supplier in a very big European country that needs to monitor their wind turbines.
So,
For Rapid.Space, the customers are 2 types. So let's say for the cloud, we didn't push it much in the last 2 years because people were too obsessed by Amazon, Azure, and so on. But now that they realize that their data is not safe, because, you know, there's a law in US called Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And basically, no matter what you touch, if it's made in US or owned by partially US, a US government has right to remotely connect to your machine and do whatever they want. So they set such a law. There is similar law in China, which is actually let's say, copied from the US law. So if you want to put your data in a safe place, you need to have full control on the hardware and the software and the source code of your cloud. And people finally start realizing that. So we see a little interest. The big interest is with telecom. In telecom, you only have 4 big companies that can really serve you, like Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, ZTE, and maybe a 5th one recently, Samsung. And that creates a kind of too much control on the price. And in countries where, for example, Huawei and ZTE is forbidden, that leaves very little choice. So if you want a full telecom solution that's under your control, that really works, that's automatically tested, you don't have much choice except us. Because either you have very complex solutions. In the world, it's called Open RAN Policy Coalition. And those are so complex and costly that basically you pay twice as much as what you would pay with Nokia. Or you have completely, let's say, in our case, there is one component from a company called Amarisoft, which is not open source. Everything else is open source. And the open source equivalent don't implement the full 3GPP standard, so they are not acceptable for operators. So when you look at the market, except Amarisoft and something that automates it, which is what we do, I don't see much choice. Therefore, we have a lot of traction. So customers, operators, governments for police forces, army, industries that want to do Industry 4.0 with 5G, this kind of thing.
so when you started Rapid.Space or Nexedi, what was your experience, and how is your experience now after involving in it?
I was a high-rank civil servant working in a region of France and giving subsidies to companies. Something I was distributing something like 20 million euro subsidies every year. And then I was interested in industrial policy because, for example, French nuclear power stations are the result of a strong national industrial policy. Same for the telecom in the 70s. So I was quite admirative of that, and Japan had the same idea. But sadly, in my times, which were the beginning of 2000, no more industrial policy in France. So I quit as a civil servant. And you must know it's a very well-paid job. When you're a high-rank civil servant in France, it's paradise in theory. But my job didn't mean much. So I created a small company. It was very tough because I basically started to live with like 500 euro per month in the beginning. Then after a bit success, I can reach 1,000. And the cost of living in France is pretty high. It's really, really difficult. I spent all my savings. My car, for example, I had an accident. A big truck pushed me on the back and my car was destroyed. So I actually created the company with the insurance money of the car, which helped me survive 1 year, making the first version of ERP5 myself. And little by little, I rebuilt something to reach, I would say, a modest standard of life because we are doing open source, but with a life full of meaning. So what I would say, what I learned is to be independent and be ready to do hard things, hard choices for myself to remain independent. This is the big lesson because when you're a civil servant, money comes from the sky. You have nothing to do. But when you have to earn the money as a CEO and run a company, and that money you have to pay people and make sure everybody gets a salary, that changes completely the sense of responsibility. So that's a big change.
So how is now?
Now it's good. Well, there's a general economic crisis all over the world. We are again in very hard times. I would say until 2023, we lived in a form of a good life because there has, let's say, customers were paying on time, paying good, let's say, good amount. Government was flooding subsidies in Europe to a very high point, so life was easy. Now customers face problem. They don't have as much income as before, so they can pay very late with 1 year delay. Government has no more money, and everything is contracting everywhere. In China, there's a higher job rate of unemployment. So I would say now we are facing again hard times where we will have to save, focus, and address customer needs rather than our fantasies. And
So,
this is always like that every 10 years. So we've seen an economic crisis like that. Things goes up and down, and it's the same as now as the beginning of the company, ready to do hard choices to build, and after 1 or 2 years, be back in I would say, another cycle of high profitability.
what you learned in this, in this period of time, and what that, observation of yours, or what kind of solutions that made you to be successful?
The key point is to focus on the customer. You need to have customers in different countries, very important, to divide the risk, to remain independent. If you have big customer in a single country, you are kind of slave to that customer and anything can happen very bad. So international expansion is essential to preserve independence. That's a very important lesson. Another thing is, let's say, when hard times come, focus is necessary. And but when the times are less hard, the opposite of focus, I would say, letting the most crazy ideas or fantasies or come out of your head, can generate new technologies that will be very useful after 10 years. So focus only is wrong. Sometimes you have to produce nonsense, because out of the nonsense, sometimes very nice germs come out, which are actually not nonsense. They are very great ideas. So I remember around 2005, there were Nokia smartphones. We said, oh, let's run ERP5 on a smartphone. And everybody was laughing. That sounds so stupid. Who would ever use a smartphone to manage and run the company? But nowadays, when we deploy ERP5 in factories, everybody has a smartphone accessing ERP5 to track the production of cars. So the idea that sounded ridiculous, was making everybody laugh 20 years ago, is actually now the standard. So only focusing is wrong. You just have to focus when times are hard, and as soon as times are not hard, you have to release creativity by accepting nonsense. That's it.
So where this understanding came from diversified customers and diverse industries as clients.
Sorry, I didn't hear the beginning.
Where this understanding for you came from, is that from your experience?
No, it came from the experience of another CEO. So I was making at the end, before becoming a civil servant, at the end of my graduation, we had to do a master's report, and I met about 40 CEOs all over Europe, and I met some in France. And one of them told me, "Hey, guy, I have to tell you one thing. If you ever create a company in France, never, ever, ever sell to French. Always start to go abroad. French are the worst customers. You know, this big car company, when the new CIO came, he took the list of suppliers and all the French, he removed them. It's like a French CIO of a French automotive company removing all French suppliers of software. So there's a specificity in France where in the field of IT, there is a kind of the opposite of being proud. Say KVM QMU is made by Fabrice Bellard in France. So one of the core software for cloud infrastructure comes from here. But you will hear non-stop from government that nobody knows how to do anything for cloud technology in France. But you look, okay, KVM. Then if you look at Europe level, Python. Then you look at VRAN, Amarisoft, and you find 50% of the technologies that are used or acquired by American cloud companies actually come from Europe when you seriously check. But the government are brainwashed with the idea that we are worth nothing. In the field of IT, it's different for weapons, it's different for nuclear power plants, it's very specific to IT. So I knew that, so I focused on export. Then I was lucky because if I look at my sales cycle, my first customers will usually be in Germany. My next customer will be in Japan. My next customer may be in US, in Ireland, some country like that. And 10 years after, in France. So there's a very specific thing that you will find unbelievable pioneers in France in terms of technology, but in terms of market, it's lagging behind by 10 years. So if you are a pioneer, for example, we were using a NoSQL database since 25 years ago. At the time, even the word didn't exist. That's pioneer. But we don't say it, not to make customer afraid. So, but if I look when we had a big customer in France, it took 10 years. So this is very specific to our country. You don't have the same thing in Germany. You don't have necessarily the same thing in US. It's different. But in our country, it's like that. And because I heard somebody telling me, hey, never rely on French market as a French. Then I remembered. Then I did it. And I really thank him. And all my colleagues who are relying only on French market, they suffer. They endlessly suffer to have to justify that their product is good because when you show a great technology, what people will tell you is, yeah, but why nobody talks about it? Then I don't trust you. But when you go to countries of engineers like Germany or Japan, here is my technology, you explain, you have an engineer in front of you, he understands what great things you did and said, yes, that's a good idea. And you never have this distrust barrier. So this is where it comes from. Then after 10 years, French customers become very loyal and things change. And it's just conservatism. Conservatism creates a lag in market adoption, but conservatism creates long-term loyal relations to pro and con.
So, what made you to be successful with the services that you are providing?
We had the chance that our first CTO was Japanese, and he's called Mr. Okuji, and he was the creator of Grub. And he taught us one thing very early, the notion of automated testing. So the software ERP5 is very generic, has a quite beautiful architecture. So that's why it was, for example, one of the chapters of the O'Reilly book called Beautiful Code, which was featuring ERP5, and the other authors were people like Kernighan, for example, the creator of C. So, okay, beautiful, but beautiful doesn't mean reliable. And reliable, you only get it through automated testing. And we learned automated testing very early compared to others, and we applied it everywhere. We have automated testing of the unit functions, of the deployment, of the naming, of the scalability. We don't just have automated unit testing. For example, deployment tests are very interesting. That's when you do cloud. Can you be sure that at any time when you do the build, configure, instantiate, run of ERP5 or another software, does it provide the expected service on a given multi-cloud infrastructure? This, we have a reply every hour with the latest code of all our software. So we have testing of absolutely everything. And this has helped a lot to improve the productivity of the developer team and to generate profit that can be used for research and development. And that's a key part of the success.
So being successful, being independent, tell me about the visionary that is there in you.
Oh, I had written a book, and the book was about open source in 1999. It was one of the French book on the economy of open source. Then I thought, what will I do next? Now I'm high-rank civil servant, and I think it's not that useful, my job. What will be now my next job? Then I checked every open source software that existed or didn't exist, and one type didn't exist, ERP. So I say, hey, let's make an ERP. So it came from the fact that I thought open source was the future. That's why I wrote a book. And it is the future, or the right way, because if you don't have open source, you will always have monopolies due to the nature of the software economy. So that has been proven by many economists. You have a winner-takes-all phenomenon in software, which actually generates monopolies. Once the monopolies are there, the quality becomes low, the price high, and everybody suffers. If you put open source in such markets, it acts as an automatic regulation of the market. Then you get a balance between proprietary and open source that make everything, let's say, more cost efficient with better quality. So I really believed in the importance of open source. So I made that open source ERP. And during the times, my education is in mathematics, and in mathematics, the key thing in early 20th century was unification of maths by Nicolas Bourbaki group that actually rebuilt the whole mathematics from set theory. And I was annoyed to see ERPs with 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 of tables and no theory behind. So my point was, let's make a theory that can unify all management science from an IT perspective. Because I couldn't accept the idea that something cannot have a simple model of unification. All science have a unification. Why not management science? So I took a year of thinking. Then I came up with a minimal model with 5 concepts that now have some papers in IEEE research reviews. And I decided to push it till the end, until I could unify any aspect of let's say, of a management software into that model. And so that was one of the driving vision, and it took, I would say, 15 years or to complete it and prove it works. That was one. And besides that, so that's one driver. Another driver with me is the freedom. How can we protect the freedom of people and companies? So with people, it means how can you write what you want to write without someone else sneaking into what you're writing. If there's no privacy, there's no freedom for people. For companies, how can we have fair economy if trade secret is not protected? And if a foreign government can sneak into your commercial secrets, this is unfair. It's no longer a true market. So freedom for people is freedom, let's say, of writing what you want and doing what you want in your environment, minimally. And for companies, it's a protection of trade secret. And this is my second driver that led to the distributed cloud SlapOS in 2008. And I think this second driver of protecting trade secret and freedom is increasingly important because both, I would say, now we are in a world where even creation of software is being criminalized. That's a new tendency. You write a software, for example, if you write an AI software in Europe, and you don't put an Orwellian management system tracking that every line of code will respect democracy, gender equality, environment protection, unbiased information, etc., you are not complying with the law. So it's not even the publication, but even the creation of the software that is criminalized if you don't put some kind of absurd management overhead on it. And we've seen also police arresting recently creators of software, but the creator just wrote a software, published it, it was original software, but this software was providing privacy for money exchange or money transfer. So the person just wrote a software, published it, then he got arrested. And then you have other laws that in different countries where if you write certain types of software, you might be arrested. So if I look over the last 25 years, the freedom of programming has decreased. Then the freedom of doing business through the protection of trade secret has decreased. Many government laws give government the permission to sneak into your commercial secrets and transfer them through Department of Justice to your competitor. So this fight for freedom, I think, is still very important nowadays. I would say on the ERP5 unification, we have mostly completed the vision. And now it's not yet a vision, but it's a challenge. We are facing a big challenge nowadays with the protection of trade secret or people's privacy with all the new regulations that have been in place. And one of the worst ones are the ones related to cybersecurity, because in the name of cybersecurity that is supposedly made to protect peoples against bad quality software, what actually happens is monitoring of software creation, and after some time imposing backdoors. You can find many regulations these days that were adopted, including in Europe, that impose backdoors. So I came to open source free software because of freedom. I see these days a world with actually less freedom, and I think this vision is still very valid, and we need people to fight for it.
So how you are able to be a good business owner and also a person who is a good engineer?
Sorry, how can?
How you are able to be a good engineer and also a good business owner?
I'm not sure I'm good in either anymore because I'm doing the two. But if you look at many companies, they are run by engineers, telecom companies, software companies. So engineers are good at creating a vision that will provide meaning to the work of other engineers. So that actually creates a kind of stability. Then we are weak at other things. We can be weak at marketing, weak at expressing ourselves, weak at managing finance. but at least they ensure that the basic part is there, which is a product that works and serves the customer interest. I think in future, whenever we grow, we'll have to have other talents in the team to grow faster, of course. Then to keep on growing, we'll just have to be able to recognize and work smoothly with other talents that are not engineers.
And what next? Like which country you want to work and which clients that you want to collaborate with?
So actually, I will visit India this year. I've been invited, and but just first to watch without any predefined idea. Then I think, how can I say, with growing economic crisis, but that's a funny thing about open source. Open source works very well in rich countries and doesn't work well in developing countries. It's why? Because in rich countries, the rich people are so afraid to become less rich that they will do anything to save cost and expense to keep their own wealth. So you take the richest countries, going a little bit down, always a lot of customers for open source. You go in the opposite to a developing country that feels proud, that finally they create their airplane, they create their trains, this kind of pride. And you come and sell open source and you have people looking at you. Why do you want me to use that? I want Windows. I'm worth it. Something like that. So it's just like they would see the software, they would purchase the software like just you purchase a bag or makeup. It has to have a brand. Then it's very hard to sell open source in, let's say, successful developing countries. So my guess is we have high chances to focus and export on, let's say, rich countries for open source. And for India is, of course, successful developing countries. There's a widespread of wealth between very rich, very poor, lots of technology, but at the same time, in some places, less technology. I'm not sure we have a market there because of what I saw in Brazil or in China, in all over the world. We always had difficulties. But maybe on the topic of sovereignty, there might be something because for example, imagine if India wanted to have its own telecom infrastructure vendor that really works. Except us, there is no other that can provide full sovereignty. If you use the Intel technology, you need to buy Intel chipset, else it doesn't really work. If you use our technology, you can run it on Chinese CPU, European CPU, American CPU, you are totally independent. And it's, let's say, one core of a CPU is enough to drive a 44-hour radio unit for 4G, or 3 core is enough to drive 4400 megahertz 5G. So it's super energy efficient. So if a country wants to be independent, in telecom, basically they have to talk to us. Then we provide that independence. So maybe there could be something like that in India, but it's never easy. It can take time in India too. But we'll see.
So who are your customers for Rapid.Space?
The customers for Rapid.Space are usually telecom operators, very big ones. That's one. Number two, governments. Suppose you want to attach a 5G base station to every police car. That's just an example. Imagine you're in India, you want every police car to have its local 5G so that the policemen can use a smartphone when they are on the countryside to talk each other when they arrest someone on a mission, or use the same phone where they are in the city. So having 5G or 4G all the time. So this requires to have your own base station on your car because there are areas with no coverage. Then you want to put that in every car and you want to do it made in India, like the casing in India, the PCB, everything. And you want full control on how it runs. Then we come and we say, okay, the design is open source. Our base station, you can download from our Git all the FreeCAD or the Altium PCB design. Make it yourself. The management software is open source. Slap OS, you have this repository, you have everything. It will be completely autonomous, self-healing. And the core network, open source if you want. We have. And then, the little part that computes the radio signal, I'm sorry, it's not open source, it's from Amerisoft. Because if everything was open source, probably we never get a single contract from India. Because usually the kind of request we get from India is, please send me the manual for your open source software so that I can make my business myself and start selling. So it's like, please work free for me to make money without paying you. This is the typical pattern we get from India. It's very funny. So okay, then we say, to make sure this pattern doesn't happen, we have this little part by Amerisoft. It's like a 200 kilobyte software, very small, and you have to pay for that. Then if you pay a little bit, you have a normal license. If you pay more, you can even get source code. Then by doing this, we get governments acquiring source code and paying for the rest to have a full system that works. And this business model works very well. Because what is the alternative? Go and buy a chipset from electronic vendor, and you depend on how they design the chipset, and maybe the chipset has backdoors. Or get the system from Intel, which depends on an Intel chipset, or get a closed solution from one of the four big, Nokia, Ericsson, ZTE, Huawei. Then whatever the other solution, you don't have control on cost, and you don't have control on whether they are backdoors or not. But in our case, we get control on cost, control on backdoors. So governments who really look for sovereignty and build their local industry will come to us usually.
So what experiences, I mean, when you was in university, if you compare yourself with the person who studied in the university, so what is the difference that you are observing in yourself?
More patient, more resilient to, I would say, stressful incidents. That's the big difference. But I was also educated by, there's a group in France called Réseau Entreprendre. It's old CEOs teaching to young CEOs how to run a company. It's a very interesting group created in the north of France by, I don't know if you know, there's a supermarket called Auchan, or Decathlon is another type of supermarket. They have presence worldwide. And the Auchan family created a kind of association to teach young rookies how to run a company. So I also had this experience, and they come really, we are complete rookie in the beginning, and they teach us things, but because they run companies themselves, you listen to them. Because if you had a university professor teaching you how to run a company, he doesn't really know how to run a company. He knows how to teach. But if you have a successful CEO who has run big companies and teaching you like tricks of running a company, you carefully listen. That was a very good education I had from Réseau Entreprendre. Then after that, the key change was learn to be more patient and react with less stress in case of stressful events. And over time, this is the big change.
So what is your driving force? What makes you to wake up in the morning and go and do that?
Well, initially, because we had to make the software, make the thing and prove it works. So proving things work is the main driver. And in a sense, I can say today, we have nearly proven everything to work. So this is less driver than before. It's a big problem. Because after you make everything work, why do you need to wake up if you already proved it works? So the next step, that's a big problem. So then the next step is probably to find something to build that we prove works. That's one thing. And there are other drivers. So money can be a driver sometimes. So it will be more a driver for other people than for me. But for some people, it's a very important driver. And I would say if I look at the roots of all drivers, I think freedom for me is the driver. How can we bring freedom to people and businesses? And nowadays, that would be my driver.
So when you prove something from nothing, and when you get acceptance from your customers or your clients, and how does that feel, and how do you feel because you started things individually?
You feel useful and thus happy. And if what works is done in a new way that is simplified, it feels like life has meaning because we contributed as a team something to the state of, let's say, knowledge, art, and science. So proving that a new way of doing things works basically gives meaning of life to all our team. And once you have this meaning of life inside your heart, you also feel like relieved and free. So it makes life very happy.
So what you're going to do with Nexedi and Rapid.Space in coming years?
So this is currently a big question. For sure, Rapid.Space, we are going to, it's easy to see. Rapid.Space will build up slowly as a telecom infrastructure vendor. And we see the market, we see the reception, it works. So it's simple. In the case of Nexedi, what we see is that the border between ERP, big data, and even AI is becoming gray. And so we are seeing, in a sense, even more fusion between the different aspects of management. And at the same time, all the contributions of ERP5 are far from understood or adopted by the industry. So I see the future more in the adoption and sharing the knowledge of what we acquired with ERP5 in the future by making it more accessible, more documented, this type of direction. If there is a big step to do, there is probably something to do in terms of automation or increased productivity in using the management tools with AI, but I'm not yet sure it can work because AI lacks determinism and management expects determinism. So this is an open question. So I would say that what we did needs to be, I would say, more accessible, more shared on the side of Nexedi. On the side of Rapid.Space, grow the solution to make it really work for big telecom networks. And regarding edge computing and these things, this is still an open question whether people really want to liberate themselves from, let's say, US or Chinese clouds, or whether they really want to have this dependency. I'm not sure yet that despite what people say or write in newspaper, they really want to liberate themselves.
Do you want to even come into other industries with Rapid.Space?
So, sorry, I didn't.
Are you interested in coming to other industries as well, apart from telecom, with Rapid.Space?
Yes, we are going to industrial automation. So we have a solution completely open source for industrial automation. If you look at all the industries in the world, which industries are not yet dominated by open source, because if you build a cloud or whatever software nowadays, open source is dominant. On the desktop, or let's say on the terminal, with the smartphones, it's Android, it's open source at the core. So there are two industries that were not open source. One was telecom, so we did it. And the next one is industrial automation. And we have a complete solution now that's fully open source. It's a huge market. So we are probably going to offer something on that market.
So at last, what do you say to my audience who are listening this? They can be business owners or business professionals from different parts of the world.
So I think it's very important to feel pleasure at what you are doing in order to do it well. If you just think money and only money and you don't consider passion or pleasure, I have doubts that you will make something good for the customer. So I think it's very important, the passion and the pleasure. The second thing is, be very, very focused on the customer. A loyal customer brings you independence. A venture capitalist brings you the opposite of independence. Because if you make a product to satisfy the fantasies of the venture capitalist, and he's happy, but there's no customer, and you run out of cash, and you need a new one, and make a new fantasy, you'll have no independence. But if you serve a customer with something that's very useful to the customer, he will be ready to pay every month, every year to keep on using that thing that's useful. And during that time, you don't need to worry running out of cash. You are independent. Even if you get financed by venture capitalists, it's not our case. This independence is also what gives you the power to negotiate the next round. So I really recommend to think about developing your business in an independent way. I know some companies that chose the venture capital way, other the independent growth ways. And in the end, independent growth way, if you are clever and target the right market, will actually make you even richer than VC. Because if you sell your company, let's say, for $1 billion and you own only 1% in the end, or if you sell your company for $100 million and you own 100%, the second one is better. So I know people who did the second case. And so overall, passion, pleasure, and remain independent.
It's here by the leaders of different companies. So at last, as an experienced professional and business owner, what is your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I have not yet seen your work. I'm so sorry. I apologize. But I will surely look at it after, for sure. And also, what I could say is I actually run myself a show in which every month in France I'm giving a chance to entrepreneurs to talk about what they do in open source. I think generally it's a good idea because this content will last very long. So what you take as a video today can be watched after 10 years and will still contain some, let's say, useful thoughts and teachings. So I think doing that is very, very useful. It also makes people who create companies like me kind of happy to be recognized. And this is something we never hear usually in the daily life of running a company. It's also the reason why I interviewed all these open source CEOs, to give a chance to recognize their work. So your approach, when I heard it the first time, I said, of course I'll do, because I kind of do something similar, focusing on open source. And I think this will be useful content for at least 50 years. So I thank you for doing it.
Thank you, sir. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes, you can.
And also, can I put this on audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
For sure, you can.
Thanks, Jean, for your valuable time and sharing about Rapid.Space and Nexedi and sharing some of your experiences and answering to some of my questions. So,
Thank you. So have a nice day. Bye bye.
I take care.